Brazil. Motorsport. Two concepts that have been intertwined for decades. When I talk about motorsport in Brazil, it's not only about a sport in a country, it's a culture deeply rooted in its identity. It revolves around legendary tracks like Interlagos and legendary drivers. Names like Ayrton Senna and Emerson Fittipaldi are true champions, but also symbols for an entire nation, drivers that made Brazil great in motor racing. And even today, the tradition continues. Felipe Nasr is one of them. He built a solid international career, while on home soil the best drivers raced like stars under crowded grandstands. But among them all, there is one in the modern era who managed to reach the top, winning when it looked impossible, driving a small team to great success and climbing the catch fence. This is the story of Spider-Man. This is the story of Hélio Castroneves. To truly understand Hélio Castroneves' story, we need to go back to Brazil in the 80s. At the time, for a young Brazilian driver, that was one main path: Europe. Formula 1 was the goal. Drivers like Emerson Fittipaldi and Nelson Piquet had already won world titles. Brazil was established on the international stage. And like many before him, Castroneves followed that path. Born in São Paulo, he grew up inside the motorsport, following his father's small stock car racing team. The following step was almost obvious. Helio asked his father for a go-kart and started racing himself. Despite his mother's opposition, he was determined. He tried football, judo, swimming, tennis, volleyball, but always came back to racing, inspired by a rising Brazilian star of that era, Ayrton Senna. Eventually, even his mother accepted it. By 1987, he was already competing at a high level. His first trophy arrived the same year. His father went all in, even selling property in Rio de Janeiro to fund his son's karting career. Strong result in Brazil led to the next step: Europe, the karting world championship, 16th place on his first attempt. Then it was time to jump on cars. In 1992 he took part in the Formula Chevrolet Brazil, but the real target was clear. Just like Senna had done years earlier, Castroneves flew to England to compete in British formulas. In the mid-90s, the British Formula 3 Championship was the category where future Formula 1 drivers came through. And Castroneves? He was there. He was fast, consistent, capable of fighting at the front. He even won at Donington, but not the driver everyone else was chasing. And that's where careers begin to change. The budget has a limit. Funding becomes harder to secure. Most of the drivers start switching championship looking for anywhere to find their way. So did Castroneves, looking for a seat for the following season. And then the opportunity came. In November 1995, he was offered a test session in the United States, 4 days at Phoenix, an oval track, something completely unfamiliar to a driver from South America. Phoenix is a tough track. With sustained G-force and high speed on low banked corners, it was a completely different discipline. He didn't even complete the test. Exhaustion forced him to stop early. But despite that, Tasman Motorsport offered him a seat in the Lights, the developmental series for kart. The team would cover part of the budget, the rest came from a corporate sponsor. And at that point, going back to Europe for another season in Formula 3 wasn't financially possible anymore. So, the decision was made. In 1996, he committed to the United States. In the first season, there were moments of speed, including a win at Trois-Rivières, with races that didn't go as planned. At one point during the season, the pressure built up enough that he sought help from a sports psychologist. Adapting was proving harder than expected. If 1996 was about opening a new path, 1997 was a season of high expectations. Before the season even began, his main sponsor withdrew. Suddenly, that was not financial safety net. He stayed with Tasman Motorsports, but under one condition: if he won, the prize money wouldn't go to him, it would go to the team until every debt was repaid. And the performance followed. 3 wins, multiple pole positions, enough to fight for the championship until the very end, but not enough to win it. At the end of the season, his teammate and compatriot Tony Kanaan was ahead of him, but Castroneves was fast, competitive, and this year changed something. In June 1997, a new figure entered his career. A 2-time Indianapolis 500 winner, a world champion, one of the most respected names in Brazilian motorsport, Emerson Fittipaldi became his manager. From that moment on, Castroneves was no longer navigating alone. He finally had a key figure of motorsports who believed in him. 1998. Helio Castroneves now had a manager behind him and strong credibility. He was considered a good driver, someone who could remain at the highest level. And in January, he was invited to a test with Bettenhausen Racing at Sebring International Raceway. This test led to a contract, a full season in kart, driving the number 16 Reinhardt Mercedes and working alongside Tom Brown, an experienced engineer with a background at Penske Racing. Castroneves was now at the top level of American open-wheel racing. The first race was unforgiving. During practice for the season opener at Homestead, he crashed. Cleared to race despite a head injury, he started the championship with a 24th position. During the season, he was still adapting. Inconsistent, but increasingly present at the top. The first highlight in Long Beach, top 10. With the first significant result, second place at Milwaukee, enough to be noticed. Midway through the season, interest started to grow. Teams like Chip Ganassi Racing and Team Rahal were looking at him as a potential option. For the first time, top organizations were paying attention to him. But the move never happened. Emerson Fittipaldi made the decision. He believed staying with the Mercedes-Benz engines was the better path, so Castroneves stayed. At the time, this decision looked solid. In reality, it wasn't. In January 1999, Bettenhausen Racing let him go. Once again, Castroneves had to find another way in. Weeks later, he secured a deal with Hogan Racing, but he had to bring the budget himself. He was set to drive the unreliable number 9 Lola B9900 Mercedes-Benz car, uncompetitive and with inconsistent power delivery. And yet, he made it work. A solid result at Motegi, then a second place at Gateway.
I was thinking, Jesus, this is Michael, it's me. I was so close to him to call, but next one.
At Milwaukee, he took his first car pole position. Proof, once again, that the speed was there. At the end of the season, he was 15th in the championship. But things were looking good once again. At the end of 1999, Hogan Racing shut down its kart program. The funding was gone, so did Castroneves' seat. This time, even the system around him failed. Without the support of Emerson Fittipaldi, Castroneves and his sister took control of the situation themselves. They looked for any available seat, without success. This could have been the end. Then, at the final race of the season, the Marlboro 500 at Fontana, the sport was shaken by tragedy. Penske driver Greg Moore lost his life in a horrible accident. One of the most promising drivers of his generation was gone, and suddenly, one of the most important seats in kart was empty. Team Penske needed a replacement under pressure from the sponsor, and at the moment, Castroneves was chosen. He signed a 3-year contract. After uncertainty, he was now inside the most demanding organization in American motorsport. Shortly after, he ended up his relationship with Fittipaldi. Now, with Penske, a new chapter has started. In 2000, everything around him shifted. Team Penske went under big changes. They stopped building cars to using a Reinhardt 2KI, switching from Mercedes to Honda engines and choosing Firestone over Goodyear as a tire supplier. For Castroneves, it meant starting over. The Honda engine responded differently. The driving style required adjustment. Even inside the team, nothing came easily. His teammate was Gilles de Ferran, established, experienced, and immediately competitive. For Helio, the second place at Long Beach was the only point finish in the first 6 races. But then, in Detroit, Juan Pablo Montoya retired with a mechanical failure. Castroneves inherits the lead and wins. Here, the legend of Spider-Man was born, when he climbed the catch fence to celebrate his victory.
One of the most emotional victory speeches we've ever heard. What a great victory for Helio Castroneves.
From there, the season changes direction. Another win in Mid-Ohio, then Laguna Seca. He finished 7th in the championship. He proved he deserved that seat. He belonged there, and recognition followed. At the end of the year, he was named the inaugural Greg Moore Legacy Award winner for what he represented on track and beyond. In 2001, expectations were high. Now driving the number 3 Reinhardt 01 Honda car, Castroneves entered the season as a legitimate contender. Inside the team, he received a lot of support. Long Beach, second race of the season, Castroneves started in pole position. 82 laps later, he was the winner. He never left the first position for every of the 82 laps. At Motegi, he controlled the race, finishing second. But 1 week later, Castroneves did something no one expected. Indianapolis, the center of American motorsport. A racing circuit of 4 kilometers and 4 corners, everyone equal and everyone different to the others. Here, since 1911, the greatest spectacle in racing takes place. 200 laps, 500 miles, is the Indy 500. In 1996, the split between kart and Indy Racing League has redefined the system. The Indy 500 now belongs to the IRL, but top kart teams still returned, and in 2001, kart didn't schedule a championship race on that weekend. Helio Castroneves arrived with Team Penske after driving the Dallara IR01 Oldsmobile in Phoenix for the inaugural race of the IRL season. At Indianapolis, he qualified 11th, the best of the rookies. The race began under the clouds, and race interrupts the competition for 2 times. 8 yellow flags came out in total, but from lap 149, Castroneves took the lead and held back his teammate Gildo Ferran in the last laps. He wins on his first attempt. His name was now on the Borg Warden trophy.
What a great young driver we have, and Joe right there too. Are you surprised at all? Roger Penske running off to victory lane to congratulate his driver. He's back in victory lane for a 12th time. Boy, the entire crew and Gildo Ferran have been part of the team. Well, most of the team has joined them. I've never seen a celebration quite like this at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
The rest of the season in kart went smoothly with 2 more wins and a 4th place in the championship. For 2002, following the sponsor will, Team Penske decided to switch to IndyCar full-time. Castroneves follows. After winning the second race of the season in Phoenix, the focus for Helio was about Indy. 13th in qualifying, he started the race aiming for a back-to-back win. The Indianapolis 500 of that year took place after a month heavily affected by rain. On race day, conditions finally stabilized. Clear sky and mild temperatures. After an opening phase led by Bruno Junqueira, early caution and pit cycles reshaped the order. In the middle phase, Thomas Scheckter established control, but on lap 173, his race ended with a crash while leading. During the caution that followed, Hélio Castroneves stayed out of the pits, taking the lead on fuel strategy. Behind him, Felipe Giaffone and Paul Tracy closed in as the race approached its final laps. Castroneves was managing fuel, and with just over 2 laps remaining, Tracy moved alongside, attempting a pass for the lead. At the same time, a separate accident occurred in Turn 2, involving Laurent Redon and Buddy Lazier. Race control immediately called for a caution. Tracy and Castroneves were side by side as the yellow flag was called. Castroneves lifted, reacting to the caution. Under the regulation of that year, the race leader was determined at the moment the caution was called. From Tracy's perspective, the overtake was completed before the caution was fully in effect. From Castroneves' perspective, the caution was already active when the pass occurred. Race control, led by Brian Bernard, declared Castroneves the leader at the moment of the call. The race continued under yellow, and as the drivers crossed the finish line, Castroneves was declared winner, securing his 2nd consecutive Indianapolis 500. The result was immediately contested. Team Green, representing Tracy, filed the protest. Their argument focused on the timing of the trackside caution lights. Indy Racing League officials reviewed multiple reference points and rejected the protest, stating that Castroneves was leading at multiple of the key points. An appeal followed. During the hearing, both sides presented evidence, including driver testimonies and technical data. On July 2nd, the appeal was officially denied. Castroneves was confirmed as the winner. The reaction remained divided. Some accepted the ruling based on the procedural consistency, others questioned the timing and interpretation. In the end, however, this race marked the confirmation for Hélio Castroneves. After the 2002 Indianapolis 500, a new phase of his career began. For the rest of the season, Hélio Castroneves remained constantly at the front, 9 consecutive races in top 10. By the final round in Texas, he was still in contention for the championship. He needed a win, and needed others to falter. He came close, 2nd place, just 100 of a second behind Sam Hornish Jr. The title slipped away by 20 points, 2nd in the championship. 2003, an unexpected possibility emerged. At the time, Toyota Formula 1 represented one of the most ambitious projects in the sport. Backed by significant resources, the team entered in Formula 1 in 2002 with a dedicated factory in Cologne and expectation of rapid progression. But results did not follow immediately. Despite its scale and investment, Toyota was still in a development phase, competitive in flashes but far from the front of the grid at the start of 2003. For a driver, it was both an opportunity and a risk. A chance to enter Formula 1, but within a project that had yet to prove itself. Castroneves impressed during testing, but the race seat went to Cristiano D'Amatta, the 2002 kart champion. So Castroneves stayed with Team Penske. What followed was an amazing season, wins at Gateway and Nazareth, numerous 2nd places, another title fight that went down to the final race. In Texas, for the last round of the year, he was one of the 5 drivers in the title contention, and then again, it slipped. A minor contact ended his chances of winning. In 2004, as the veteran retired from IndyCar, Hornish joined Team Penske alongside Helio Castroneves. The pattern continued. He led the most of the season opener before Hornish passed him for the win. Consistent result and one single victory in the season finale in Texas. By this point, Castroneves was established. He contested the title every year and battled with the first in every race. From 2005 to 2008, that dynamic repeated. Podiums, pole position, victories, and championship fights that always remained within reach. In 2006, he arrived at Indianapolis 500 as a contender and left after crashing out. In 2007, another strong season, consistent but ultimately never decisive. In 2008, he opened the year with momentum, built upon lead, stayed in contention until the very end. At the final race at Chicagoland Speedway, starting from the back, he drove to the field and crossed the line ahead of Scott Dixon by just 0.003 seconds. He won the race, but not the championship. Again. By the end of this period, the pattern was undeniable. Castroneves was always in the fight. He was one of the best drivers in the series. Just, he remained short of becoming the one driver everyone else has to beat. At the end of 2008, for the first time in career, the biggest challenge wasn't on track. In the months leading up to the season, Helio Castroneves faced federal charges in the United States, a legal battle that, if gone differently, could have ended his career. In March, he was acquitted, although he missed the first race of the season. 2 months later, he returned on the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. The 2009 edition marked the beginning of the Centennial Era, a celebration of track's history, 100 years after its opening. From the start of the month of May, Castroneves was among the fastest. He qualified on pole position, and on race day, he placed himself immediately in the lead group. In the first part, the pace was controlled by Scott Dixon and Dario Franchitti. Then, in the second half, the race began to open. After some incidents, caution and pit stop variables put the most of the stars up the contention, the caution on lap 132 broke the structure at the front. A problem during the pit stop compromised Franchitti's race. Dixon, the 2008 winner, was left exposed on the restart. That was the moment for Castroneves to attack, passing Dixon before turn 1. But there were still 60 laps to go. And the caution on lap 174 compacted the field once again. After the restart, Castroneves had hauled off Dan Weldon, who couldn't close the gap for the remaining 18 laps. Castroneves crossed the finish line first. Only 5 drivers had won the Indy 500 3 times. He was the 6th, and the first non-American to do so. He celebrated climbing the fence as usual with the crowd cheering for him. While his career had been defined by consistency, Indianapolis was different in every race. Castroneves gave it all to appear once again on the Borg-Warner Trophy. The significance of the victory extended beyond the result. It came after a period where his career had been under real threat. It came during one of the most symbolic editions in the history of the race. And now, Castroneves was not just there. At Indianapolis, he was a point of reference. After 2009, Helio kept racing and winning, loyal to Penske and always in the fight for the championship. But outside of it, the same pattern remained. In 2010, a victory in Alabama extended his streak to 10 consecutive seasons with at least one win. He returned to Indianapolis 500 starting from pole position. This time, it didn't translate into a victory, as a stalled pit stop removed him from the contention, 9th place. The rest of the season followed a familiar structure, again a winner in Kentucky and Motegi, 4th in the championship. In 2011, for the first time in years, the trend abruptly shifted. The season started with mistakes, incidents, and lost points. By the time he arrived at Indianapolis, he was outside of the top 15 in the standings. He qualified mid-pack and finished the race in 17th, and for the first time since 1999, no wins across the entire season, 11th in the championship. Was it the end? Castroneves responded with the very first race of 2012, St. Petersburg, winner. Next race, pole sitter, 3rd at the finish line, another win in Edmonton. It was not over yet. In 2012, he was again 4th in the championship, with a 10th place at Indy. Yes, Indianapolis. Only 3 drivers had won Indy 500 4 times. AJ Foyt, Al Unser, and Rick Mears. Castroneves had 3 wins at the moment, and he was trying every year for the 4th. This time, a lack of downforce limited his pace. Then came 2013, one of his strongest seasons. Early podiums and the championship lead. a victory at Texas after controlling the race from the front.
Climb that fence, but it looked like you hadn't forgotten. I mean, how good does it feel to win, huh? How good does it feel to win again?
Oh, it's been great. I tell you, first of all, I want to thank AAA. Boys did a hell of a job. Hitachi guys, SKF, Quicken Loans, Verizon, all our sponsors are Shell, Pennzoil, come on, PPG, everyone. If I'm forgetting, I'm sorry, I'll run out of memory.
And once again, a title fight that lasted until the very final round. At Indianapolis, the story repeated. Solid qualifying, 6th at the end. The winner of the tier was his former teammate Tony Kanaan. For Castroneves, the championship came down to the last race. He needed to outperform Scott Dixon. He didn't. Second in the standings. Again. Castroneves was still fast, competitive and capable of winning races, but something was still some way off. Indianapolis became a place of good races for him, but one win away from the record. And the championship, the one achievement that could definitely consecrate his career, remained just out of reach. Close enough to see, never close enough to secure. From 2014 onward, Helio Castroneves remained one of the most consistent drivers in the field. But now, the margin have become even thinner. In 2014, he came closer than any point since his last Indianapolis victory. He fought for the win until the final laps. He finished second, just 0.06 seconds behind Ryan Hunter-Reay, one of the most closest finish in the history of the race. The rest of the season followed with a return to the top of the standings, another title fight and another second place. In 2015, among the podium sample position, he suffered a heavy crash at Indianapolis, with a car flipping upside down at high speed. He walked away, raced, and ended 7th. 2016 was the second consecutive season without a win, but consistency brought him a 3rd place in the standings. At Indianapolis, he led laps, but a late incident ended his chances, 11th. Then came 2017. At Indianapolis, starting deep in the field, he drove through the pack until the final laps. Another duel, this time with Takuma Sato for the win. Takuma Sato took the win. Helio took 2nd place. Once again, so close. During the season, in the middle of the talks for a possible switch to endurance, he took the win in Iowa, climbing the fence for the 24th time. Proof that the speed was still there, and yet the championship remained out of reach. Castroneves was still among the best, but the margins, always small, were never on his side. And at Indianapolis, he was so close to the 4th so many times. Now it was the turning point. By 2018, the direction of his career began to change. IMSA is the greatest endurance series in North America and one of the most famous worldwide, home of the 24 Hours of Daytona, the 12 Hours of Sebring and Petit Le Mans, a series that involves official manufacturers' team and a lot of professional drivers. Roger Penske offered Helio Castroneves a seat on the new Acura ARX-05 that they will bring on track. Castroneves accepted. He stepped away from full-time IndyCar competition and moved into endurance racing, joining Team Penske's IMSA program. It wasn't a step down, it was more of a shift. A different discipline with longer races and a car to share with other drivers, a different way of winning. From the beginning, adaptation was required. He now had new teammates, new race dynamics, and a new approach to the racecrafting. This change was what he needed to go back to win. Sharing the car with Ricky Taylor in 2018, the results were solid, competitive performances, success in Mid-Ohio. In 2019, the progression continued. 5 podiums, 3rd in the standings, a presence at the front of the field across the season. He was contending for the title once again. In 2020, the season started with an 8th place in Daytona, 7th at Sebring, but then 3 consecutive wins: Road America, Road Atlanta, and Mid-Ohio. A 2nd place at Petit Le Mans and another win in Laguna Seca. That year, the COVID pandemic forced the organizers to move the 12 Hours of Sebring at the end of the season. This will be the final showdown, the final battle for the title, with many teams still in contention. The Acura of Castroneves and Taylor ended in 8th. The final standing marked 264 points for the Cadillac of Briscoe and Van Zarde. Castroneves and Taylor had 265. He was now a champion, an endurance champion. The title he longed for finally came. Castroneves was now a champion and a 3-time winner at Indianapolis. Indianapolis was the one element that never disappeared. Even with a full-time IMSA program, Castroneves kept returning to the Indianapolis 500 every year. The Indy 500s were different year by year. In 2018, starting inside the top 10, his race ended in the wall. In 2019, a collision in the pit lane removed him from the contention. In 2020, starting deep in the field, he recovered position but never entered the fight for the win. He was no longer a full-time contender, but he was still there, still chasing the same objective. By the end of 2020, the situation was clear. Castroneves had reinvented his career. He had to find success in a different category. And now that he proved he could win a championship, it was time to tie that record. If the Indy 500, alongside the Monaco Grand Prix, is the race to win for open-wheel racing, the same counts for the 24 Hours of Daytona, one of the 4 great 24 hours alongside Nürburgring, Spa and Le Mans. In the first race of the year, Castroneves will drive not for Penske, but on the Acura ARX-05 of Konica Minolta's Reinventions Racing. It wasn't his first 24 Hours of Daytona, but the first outside of Penske. This time he would share the car with Felipe Albuquerque, Alexander Rossi and Ricky Taylor. After 24 hours, their car was ahead of the number 48 Cadillac by less than 5 seconds. But it was enough. Castroneves won the 24 Hours of Daytona. Now it was time to think about Indy again. His last win was in 2009, but he came close again many times. Those 3 names continued to be the only 4-time winners: Foyt, Unser, Mears. Castroneves left Team Penske after almost 2 decades, signing with Meyer Shank Racing, a smaller team still growing, aiming to establish itself at the top level. He split his duties between IMSA and IndyCar, running selected races of both series. A different environment and a different opportunity for him. At the Indianapolis 500, Castroneves joined a large group of contenders for the first position from the initial laps. In a race with only 2 cautions, pace was the key. With green flag pit stops constantly reshaping the leaderboard and driver alternating position, Castroneves stood within reach of the first, even leading some laps mid-race. In the final phase, the duel for the win involved him and Alex Palou, the opposites, the veteran chasing the record and the youngster chasing the maiden win. One of the two took the lead with 2 laps to go. It was Castroneves. After 36 lead changes, at the end of the lap 200, he crossed the finish line. For the 3rd time, no one was ahead of him.
That is awesome! Spider-Man is back at the Speedway!
2001, 2002, 2009, 2021. After 12 years of longing, he made it. One of the longest periods between victories in the history of the race. He matched the all-time record. But more of all, this victory was different. It came after years of waiting, after a season where he had been close but never enough, after a transition away from full-time competition, with a smaller team at 46-year-old. And for the first time in a long time, the pattern broke. He was now a champion and record holder. He now was on the Olympus of the drivers. He made something only 4 drivers did, and he was the first non-American to do so. At Indianapolis, the place where his career had been defined by both success and frustration, he was once again the reference. After the 2021 Indianapolis 500, the story didn't slow down. In endurance racing, Helio Castroneves remained a central figure. At the 24 Hours of Daytona, he returned in 2022. This time with Meyer Shank Racing, and won again. Then in 2023, he did it once more. 3 consecutive victories at an endurance classic. Another endurance race to win in the USA is the Petit Le Mans, held in October as the IMSA's season finale. Helio won in 2022, then again in 2023. 2 more wins, added to a career that had already spanned decades. And alongside endurance racing, Castroneves never left Indianapolis. Year after year, he returned to the same track, still competing for the top spot. And from 2025, another chapter opened. He returned to Brazil to compete in the top-level national championship, the Stock Car Pro Series. A different category, with different cars and different environment. What does not miss anyway is speed. Balancing commitments between the United States and Brazil, Helio continues to race. He was never the most dominant driver of his generation, but he was always there. And sometimes, being a record man requires trying so many times that you remember every single race. What makes Hélio Castroneves so loved by the fans is his personality, both on and off track. In every race he gave something to remember, building a community that loves him for the difficulties he overcame, the frustration he endured, and, in the end, the trophies he held high on the podium. Today, he still races, and his career, more than a collection of results, tells the story of someone dedicated to what he loves, always waiting for the next green flag.